Join me today as we talk about the 80s sci fi horror movie Lifeforce. This is the Geek Ball channel. My name is Bobbie, and today we're finally going to get around to talking about the movie Lifeforce. If you've seen some of our other videos, you know that this has been mentioned in comments by me and Chad here and there for quite a while. But now we are finally in October horror movie season, and this is a sci-fi horror movie. So here we are. Plus, I just watched it again the other day and noticed something that's worth mentioning. Uh, so yeah, this probably leans a lot more towards sci-fi through most of the movie. You're gonna have to wait for my explanation of the plot for that to make sense. But here we go. A brief note: I did watch this on Amazon Prime, so there will be a link down in the description. However, I I, I also own this on Vudu Digital, and I was watching it on Prime. I mainly just watching to make sure that there was nothing I had forgotten because I'd actually rewatched it somewhat recently. And towards the end of the movie, there's a moment where one of the characters is confronting one of the villains, and I knew that there was a line that the villain said, and the character retorted, and the things played out a little bit differently. And so I thought maybe I just missed it, so I rewound it on Prime and paid total attention this time. And I thought, well, no, so I will rewind a little bit farther back. Maybe it was out of sequence or something. And I thought, man, that's bizarre. I know that part is there. So then I finished watching the movie, and then I was like, well, let me check the version I have on Vudu. And sure enough, it's different. Now, I don't know if that means I don't know which version is which here. I don't know what the criteria is. I don't know if that's the only missing scene. I strongly suspect it's not. So this is probably a matter of one is a probably not an unrated, but probably like a European cut or something. Whereas the other is, I mean, neither is a made for TV cut. And I'll explain that here in a minute. That is for sure not the case. Um, but yeah, so just fair warning, the version on Prime has at least one different scene in it. And like I said, probably others. So if you do go that route with watching it, um, yeah, things will be different. Just throwing that out there. And so then at that point, I tried to remember, I've seen this movie before on some movie channel way back when. I know I've seen it on TV where it's heavily edited. I have it on DVD. I might even have it on Blu-ray, and I've seen it on VHS. And I can't for the life of me remember which one I've seen more frequently. And so now I'm going to go back and check my digital my disc copy at some point. So just fair warning, there are apparently different versions of this movie. It doesn't structurally change the plot or anything. Again, I didn't notice, but I'll have to check the run times and some other things, and I'll have to look into it. So that aside, let's talk a little bit about who's in the movie. So, um, the closest thing we have to it's kind of hard to tell you who the main character is in this movie because on the one hand, it could be our astronaut character who is played by Steve. Wow, I can't read my own handwriting. Ralshak? Ralslack? Wow, I have terrible handwriting. The only things of note I noticed he was in is the movie Barbed Wire, where I vaguely recall he is like probably the evil military type who's wanting to bust up Pamela Anderson's character's operation. And then in the movie Armed and Dangerous, which is a comedy from the 80s, he plays a truck driver towards the end of the movie who has a kind of like a wild, over the top cowboy persona, and he's hauling rocket fuel. So, yeah. And then we have Peter Firth, who the only thing I noticed from his list of achievements that I've seen is the Hunt for Red October. He is the commissar that Ramius kills pretty early on in the movie, and that's kind of a thing with a lot of the people in this movie. A lot of them are British actors, and a lot of what they're in are just various British productions, or they'll be in like, oh, there's an episode of Highlander. Well, which episode? Who do you play? Oh, Frank. Who the hell is Frank? It's like, I'm not going to go digging through Highlander episodes to tell you which one he's in. I'm sorry. Um, yeah, so that's kind of what I got from some of these people. One of those two is the main character. I just don't know which one. The main, like I said, the astronaut. His name's Carlson, and I should have written down the British guy's name. Then you have Matilda May, who by the end of the movie you will not need to you won't need to like mentally fill in the blanks of anything about her appearance. Like you're going to see it, all of it, and a lot of it. And yeah, the only other thing I've ever seen her in is The Jackal, where she was one of Richard Gere's like former compatriots. I think she's like a Basque separatist or something. That's the only other thing I've seen her. She's a French actress. Then for some other big characters, we have Aubrey Morris, who plays Sir Percy. So he's like a representative for the British government. He's been in a lot of things. The main thing I saw him that I remembered was from the movie Bordello of Blood. That's the second Tales from the Crypt movie. He is the like he's like the guy that runs the mortuary. That's the front for the vampire hideout. And then we have Frank Finlay, who is in the 70s Musketeers movies, the ones with Michael York as the new guy, D'Artagnan. The new guy? I think it's D'Artagnan. Uh, I'm not super well versed on Three Musketeers lore. Unfortunately, I've never read the book. It's on my list. But he plays Porthos in those two movies. Then we also have Patrick Stewart, who, I'm going to assume I don't need to explain who he is, but just in case, he's Captain Picard on Star Trek The Next Generation, among many other things. Also, Gurney Halleck in the 80s Dune movie, and again, other things. He's a prolific actor. Very bit part in this, though, kind of early in his career. Screen career. I think he had a large stage career beforehand. So, yeah. Then there's one other guy. I guess I didn't write his name down, and now I'm trying to remember what else he was in. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't write his name down, but there's a gentleman who plays I guess it'd be a male nurse at an insane asylum at one point in the movie, who is in the movie Flash Gordon. I believe he's one of the Hawkmen. He's not the main one. That's Brian Blessed. Uh, he's not Voltan, but I think he's like his kind of second in command. Black hair, kind of thin. But yeah, so that's who we've got in this movie. And there's other people that I recognize. Like I didn't recognize who he played in the movie just immediately, but like one of the villains from For Your Eyes Only is in this movie. Yeah. So I'm sure if I knew more about British cinema, I would recognize several of these other people, but I don't. So here we are. Another thing to note, this movie is made by Canon Films, which is almost like a meme studio, before memes were a thing. And they made there's these two gentlemen. There's whole movies about Canon Films and the wild zany adventures people got into there. But essentially, it's these two gentlemen who I believe were Israelis We just kind of showed up to Hollywood and like, hey, we want to make some movies. By the way, we've got a boatload of cash. So they created the Canon Film Group, and they made some movies. They made this one. Toby Hooper's the director of this movie, who directed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 1 and Part 2, and also directed Poltergeist. I think they thought this was going to be like their Star Wars. This was never going to be their Star Wars. But they also are known for having made the movie Cobra, which was kind of like a Dirty Harry knockoff, but with Sylvester Stallone. It's a decent revenge flick in its own right. It's got him, Edward James Olmos. Uh, Brian Thompson is one of the main psycho villains. Then, oh, I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but Stallone's future wife, who played Red Sonja in the movie Red Sonja, she's in the movie, and she plays the woman that the psychos are trying to get. There's a few other people. I want to say the gentleman who played Garrick on Deep Space Nine, and he's in it as like I think he's internal affairs in the police force or someone higher up or something. But yeah, I mean it's over the top, fighting literally an army of psychopaths in Southern California. Decent movie though, I thought. Entertaining. Just need to know what you're getting yourself into. Then they also made Masters of the Universe, the live action He-Man movie, which I contend, if it weren't for one fatal flaw, could have actually been a decent movie. But that's a whole other video. And I want to get probably either Chad or Jim in on that one, because I want to talk about some things on that. But in short, Dolph Lundgren was He-Man. I mean, look at the man. He was. And Frank Langella was spectacular as live action Skeletor. I don't know the woman's name off the top of my head, but the woman who played Evelyn was really good. Also in They Live, John Carpenter flick. And also played Hera in the Hercules TV show with Kevin Sorbo. And several other things. She has very distinct looking eyes. And they're natural, apparently. But yeah, so they made other movies. I think they might have made Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. Yeah. So anyway, there's like I said, that's a whole other video about Canon films. But this is one of their movies. So now that we're more than 10 minutes into the movie, 10 minutes into our video here, what the hell's the movie about? Space vampires hiding in the tail of Halley's Comet. That's what this is about. So here we are. Yeah, so we have a space shuttle is out in space observing Halley's Comet. They close within a certain distance of it, and they detect an object, and then they realize it is a massive spaceship. It's I don't remember how many miles long it is. It's huge, and they decide to go aboard. It has a very like organic look to it. Definitely trying to get like a xenomorph kind of vibe to things. Kind of an organic technology kind of stuff going on. And then they find several dead winged creatures that look kind of like giant humanoid bats, which, from what I just told you, are the dead vampires. And then Carlson is drawn in to check out this this other chamber, and inside there, they find these three crystalline containers, and there's a woman in one of them, and a man in two men in the other two. One man in each one. So there's three altogether. So they take the three of them aboard the shuttle, which I think is the Churchill, and they bag up one of the bat-like creatures. And then the movie goes forward some more, and we find out. Then you see another shuttle goes up because they lost contact with Churchill. They go on board. The shuttle's burned out, and they find the containers, bring them aboard their shuttle, come back down, and they land in England, apparently. This is some kind of joint American English command aboard the Churchill. So they bring the bodies to somewhere. in England, some facility, and as they're in, they kind of inspect them. The crystalline cases just kind of disappear, and as they're scanning them, they're not even sure they're actually there to begin with because they're not detecting anything. So this is the beginning of seeing Matilda May's character. She's the queen, and I think I read somewhere that she's in the movie for about 18 minutes. Of those 16 minutes, she is completely naked, full, like everything is visible. And so, again, definitely not for children on this one for that reason. And I mean, otherwise, and some gore towards the end. Um, so she grabs, like, she seduces a guard and then sucks the life force out of him. He turns into like a desiccated husk. And then she kind of partially sucks the life out of another guy. Then she leaves and she's able to escape because she's powerful and just basically blasts her way through people. Then there's a naked woman walking in the English countryside. So then they kind of double the guard on the other two, on the males. Then they get up, and a couple guards machine gun and eventually grenade them. And way later in the movie, you realize that they jumped bodies, and now they're in the bodies of the two guards. Um, so the gentleman who was desiccated and sucked dry, as they're getting ready to perform an autopsy on him, he springs up and grabs the doctor, sucks the life force out of him, which brings him back to, full. And then they take they take him and the body of the doctor and put him down in the basement. And they kept track of the time. So there's a guy there, Volata. He's supposed to be an expert on death and the hereafter. And now he's presented with the possibility, like legitimate proof that there could be life after death, because this guy was definitely dead. And by the end of the movie, he realizes that these creatures are probably the basis for vampire mythology. Maybe even these exact same creatures, like these three, uh, because they would have come to Earth cyclically with Halley's Comet. And it's like a background news report that talks about how comets used to be considered harbingers of doom. And well, the implication is this is why, because they would show up and wreak havoc, sucking the life force out of people. So this is where we have our British agent. I think he's from MI5. I think that's domestic, if I remember right. Because MI6 is what Bond is in. That's supposed to be foreign. If I got everything right there. And that is Peter First's character, who I can't for the life of me remember his name. I should have written that down. I apologize. So then he kind of, stops the press from talking about things because in England you can do that. He goes in, kind of takes charge of the situation. Sir Percy shows up, representative of the British government. They go and they check out the bodies, and that's the point that the doctor starts to reanimate as the husky thing, and he ends up charging the jail cell door that he's in, and he just explodes into powdery dust. Then the guard doesn't get like another juice, another life force infusion, so he turns back into a withered husk, and now this time he genuinely is dead. They like poke him with a thing, and like his chest collapses and it's just full of dust. So they know what happens to the human victims if they don't keep feeding. And the main difference between them and the ones from space is the ones from space can jump bodies. And basically, they jump into another body, then they can make that body look like their own. So so somewhere in here, Carlson crash lands because he escaped, and he tells them what happened. It's baloney because he's like, oh well, this guy did this and this guy did this, but it's him. He smashed the radio. Uh, the crew members started dying one after another because they were being drained by the vampires. And once they were all gone, he opened up all the oxygen valves and set something on fire so that it would burn out everything, hoping to destroy them, and then hit the escape pod. And as he tries to explain to them, like, that was the hardest decision he ever had to make because he didn't want to leave her. And they don't understand quite what he's getting at. And you find out eventually that she gave him some of her life force so that he could be like a conduit. But also, she needed to get inside of one of their minds to know how to make their bodies look so they would blend in. And so she chose him. And yeah, so now he has like a psychic link with her. And so they try to hypnotize him, and they see that she looks different now, and she seduces some guy out in the countryside and realizes that they're hunting her, so she's not draining people to death. She's just taking enough to survive because she knows she's being hunted and she doesn't want to lead them right to her. And she works at this asylum for the criminally insane, the person she's now in the body of. So they go there, and this is where Patrick Stewart's character comes in. He's the chief doctor or something there, administrator. And this is where the male nurse that's also in Flash Gordon is here. And she jumps from the nurse's body, and they realize that she's in Patrick Stewart's body. So they pump him full of drugs and try to hypnotize him. And it's kind of some back and forth. And, she's telling Carlson, I want you, come to me, and, all this. And then she kind of jets out or lashes out, which kills Sir Percy. So they bring Percy's body, Patrick Stewart's body, load him up in the helicopter. They take off, and that's the point where the helicopter pilot has been told that they're supposed to go somewhere. That's where the prime minister is supposed to be. They go to talk to him. They leave. Well, en route, like Patrick Stewart, like all the blood like jets out of his body, and maybe Sir Percy's, but definitely Patrick Stewart's, to like form a blood version of the vampire woman, who again pleads with Carlson to come with her, and then she like screeches and just becomes blood all over the floor, and then we know that now they're both dead. And so take the helicopter. They go to meet the prime minister. He comes in and he's all like, yeah, hang on, guys. Miss whatever her name was, the secretary, come into my office for a moment. I think it's Miss Havisham. And yeah, it was Miss Havisham. I recognized that the name from Great Expectations. So it's obviously not the same character, just it's another British person with the same name. So he goes in there, and the other two kind of follow him in there. Then they see the flare from the life force being drained. So they know he's infected. And they're like, yeah, let's get the hell out of here. So they leave. And as they're leaving, a couple of infected soldiers try to get a hold of him. But these guys look like zombies at this point. And they take off. And that's the point where they're like, hey, take us to, and it was the facility where they first brought the vampires, where Velada still is. I think he'll have some answers. But the helicopter pilot's like, nope, we have to go here. All of London is under quarantine. And you start to see just like fires all over the city and fireballs erupting. And they're like, we're under NATO command now. And if we don't land here, they're going to shoot us down. So they land. They've got to explain to the base commander, hey, we know what's going on. I know you got to keep us in quarantine, but like, you need to know some things right now because we have to move. And so then the commander tells them that right now the NATO Secretary General is weighing the decision. If they can't stop the plague, they're going to nuke London. And so they've got like an hour and a half to stop it. And they try to explain to him, well, there's only 3 carriers. If we stop them, we stop everything. And also the alien ship has taken up a geosynchronous orbit over London. And it was originally like a long, kind of broad looking thing with weird biomechanical crap all over it. But now, like, the tail end is unfurled and it's like a giant umbrella. And there's a blue beam with all kinds of sparkles going up from the city to the ship. And Carlson tells the guy from MI5, like, all those lights, those are human souls. It's the life force of everyone that they're draining and sending it up to the ship. So Carlson steals the helicopter. He stole the helicopter. Might have stolen a Jeep, but he escapes. And then the guy from MI5 is like, well, I have to go in because if we can stop this, if we can stop her, we can stop everything. And the base commander's like, you know what you're getting yourself into. If you go in there, I cannot let you back out. And he's like, gotta do what I gotta do. So he goes in too. He goes to see Velada and fights his way in there. Uh, there's a corpse on a gurney with a sword stabbed through it. And the scene Velada had earlier in the movie, and he explains that their vulnerability is to lead sheathed iron. And the spot's not the heart, but it's actually 2 inches below the heart, the power center. And that's real convenient because you know what spits lead out at a high velocity? Guns, bullets. So then you realize that Velada's kind of dodging some questions like how he survived, and you realize that he didn't. He's been infected too, and so he moves towards the British guy. British guy shoots him, and so he dies, and his life force goes firing out of the back of his body. He takes the sword out. That was one of the two male vampires. Once he does, the body just turns to dust, basically like a skeleton. So then he fights his way out of the building. Some various characters we'd seen earlier in the movie are now basically zombies, and heads into London, which is now in the middle of a zombie apocalypse with no explanation for why these people are zombies now. And I think they are definitely zombies between their appearance and the fact they appear to be eating people. So, yeah, somehow space vampires equals zombie apocalypse in London at the end of the movie, where things just go completely off the rails at this point. British guy's fighting his way across the city. So is Carlson. To find out that the vampire queen is underground in a cathedral. It's one where various kings and queens have been buried. They don't ever name it. A lot of just calls it the cathedral. So Carlson goes down there. This is the only time in the movie where Matilda May is wearing any clothing. That does not last very long because she wants Carlson to be with her in the biblical sense. So he obliges. And he's like, why me? She's like, because Carlson, you're one of us. You always have been. And she's like, I need, my energy back. But she's like, but be with me, be one of us. So he, as near as I can tell, has been turned into one of them. And not like the others. Like, I don't think he's going to just crumble to dust. I think he's like legit. He's one of them now. The other guy comes up, and then this is where the male takes up position right in front of the entrance to the church, the one male that's left. And this is where I noticed the difference in the movie. In the version on Amazon, the guy gets knocked back whenever like the ball of energy hits because it had just been flying around as a ball of energy through London, sucking up souls. And now he hits, and his body emerges from a pile of bodies in front of the church. And they just kind of stand there and look at each other a couple times. Then the British guy takes him out with the sword. Well, I remember there being dialogue there, and that's where the difference is he looks towards the British guy and basically tells him, this will be a lot less painful if you just come to me. Basically saying, there's no point in fighting. I'm going to win. Like, you can either die afraid or not. And the British guy's like, some smart ass, like, happy to oblige kind of thing, and then takes him out with the sword. And maybe even his death scene was a little different because I think in the Prime version it just becomes like red. The energy's been blue all this time for the life force effects, and now it all of a sudden turns red and kind of circles back into him, and then he dies. Whereas in the other one, he transforms back into the bat creature and unfolds, and you get a good look at it. Then he dusts and dies, and then the other guy picks up the sword, goes into the church, sees the big blue beam, sees Carlson, because the vampire queen's like the conduit for all this stuff. She's what's sending the beam up to the ship. And he's like, Carlson, Carlson, because he's in the middle of having sex with the vampire queen. So, his mind isn't quite where it should be at the moment. And, because as Robin Williams noted, God gave men two heads, but only enough blood to operate one at a time. So, Robin Williams, funny guy. Great loss. So he gets Carlson's attention. Carlson holds his hand up. He throws the sword down. Carlson takes it like back behind her and right through both of them. I don't know that that actually killed them, however, because again, the whole life force thing starts to turn red, but you see the beam up to the ship. Then you see like the perspective of through the beam, and instead of the two of them dusting or dying or anything else, they fire up to the ship in the beam. And then it shows like the ship, all the nodes that have been blue all start to turn red. And then you see the two of them again in the crystalline chamber where they rematerialize, and there's a flash, and the ship folds up and goes back to Halley's Comet. End credits. So I don't know if London gets nuked or anything. I don't know if they died or if they're still alive. I don't know if she got enough juice to survive another, 80 years before Halley's Comet comes back. I don't know. There are no answers at the end of this movie. And yeah, so that's the plot. Space vampires being chased through the English countryside that eventually leads to the zombie apocalypse in London. I have no idea how A leads to B in that. The movie never explains it. The few times, like the couple instances we see of people being drained, they become like husks that can shatter. They don't become fleshy zombies that are eating other people. And so, yeah, I don't know how the hell that happens at the end of the movie, but it does. So, where does this movie rank in things? Like objectively, if I were to look at this objectively and note all the things that the movie just doesn't explain, it just wild interpretations, all it's out there, it would get a lower score. However, I don't think most of that matters. I personally find the movie entertaining. I could see where people would think there'd be excessive nudity with Matilda May just walking around stark naked through most of the movie. No, sorry, most of her time on screen, not most of the movie. Like I said, she's only in it for like 18 minutes. Um, yeah, I mean, overall, I like the movie. I'd probably a 7. I do wish a few things were explained. Like, give me something to work with, because I mean, shit just happens in this movie, and everyone just like goes on with their day once it happens. And I mean, they're suitably terrified when it does happen, but then they're just kind of like, well, on to the next horrific thing. So I just don't know what to make of that. But yeah, like I said, I'd say probably a 7. It's good acting across the board, and generally speaking, the effects look pretty good. The blood thing looks weird. Uh, you can tell Patrick Stewart's like a doll or something, or clearly a fake. But then like one of the blood like congeals and becomes her. Like I don't know what that was. Uh, yeah, but it looked interesting. So yeah, overall, I think it's definitely worth a watch if you're into sci-fi and horror, and just 80s in general, or if you wanted to take another look at the Canon films. Canon, Canon. I don't know. Gonna go with that. But yeah, I found that, like I said, I found the movie entertaining, and I think it's probably worth a watch if you like those things. Just note, just quickly, in case I didn't make it clear in the description, whenever I say they're vampires, I mean they suck the life force out of people. They don't bite them and drink their blood. But it's clear that the movie is going with the these are the inspiration for vampire myths, because that's what they do. And then the people that they do that to then have to keep feeding or they die. So yeah. Anyway, uh, check it out. Like I said, there are some differences between versions of the movie, and the version on Prime seems to be edited a little bit. I didn't pay enough attention throughout the rest of the movie to notice anything else. But I'll check the run times. If I get the chance, I'll do that. I'll put it in a comment or something, or the description. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. Have you seen the movie? Are you interested in seeing the movie based on my description? If you've seen it, let me know what you thought about it. What do you think about canon films in general? What do you think about Comet movies? The 80s had several of those. You got this one. You've got Night of the Comet, Maximum Overdrive. Spoiler alert, you find out at the end that it's an alien ship hiding in the comet. Things like that. Kind of, you get a little bit of that back in the 80s. And I believe it's because Halley's Comet was passing the Earth at the time. So, anyway, like I said, let me know what you guys think. Like, share, subscribe. Commenting and sharing are the best ways you can help us grow the channel, and we always appreciate all of that. But in the meantime, we'll keep an eye out for those space vampires hiding in comets.